Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this presentation. My name is Juan Cardenas-Cartagena. This is a joint work with Mohamed Eunari and Baltasar Lozano. Today we're going to talk about how to forecast some environmental variables in aquaponic systems. In particular, our main interest is pH. So let us see the outline of this presentation. First of all, I am going to talk about what is aquaponics and why we care about this particular system. Then a brief, I will provide a brief introduction to recurrent neural networks so that to make sure that we are in the same page. Some discussion about the state of the art on this particular topic, forecasting variables for aquaponic systems. The results, in particular, the workflow from the raw data to the design, to the model design and the actual results. And then I will provide some discussions and maybe future work for these results. So let us get started. The aquaponic systems, basically this is an artificial environment where fish, bacteria, and vegetables live together. The key idea here is to take advantage of the nitrogen cycle to clean water and feed the organisms in the system. So let us start by feeding the fish. The fish will eat this food and they are going to produce urine and feces. This excretion has ammonia, which is the key nutrient for the bacteria. The bacteria are going to transform this ammonia into nitrate, and this nitrate is particularly important for the vegetables, for the plants, as it's a compound of fertilizer, for example. So the vegetables are going to eat the ammonia and clean the water for the fish. So we have a closed loop system to produce food, in particular fish, and in our particular case is salmon and lettuce. So this artificial environment have several challenges. First of all, we need to produce as many vegetables as possible per kilograms of fish food. Second, we want high quality vegetables because at the end of the day, the intention is human consumption. Then we need to keep a healthy fish population because at the end of the day, these fish are in tanks. They are not in natural water. We need to minimize buffer substance in this particular system. We want to minimize the substances that control the pH, the turbidity. And of course, we want to minimize electricity cost. I think we are having a lot of headaches here in Norway with electricity these days. Most importantly, as this is an artificial system, we have to keep into account that the environmental conditions of each of the organisms is different. So, for instance, the pH of the fish is different than the required pH of the vegetables. There are certain range where those pH requirements are together. But if there is a misbalance in the system, we can either kill the fish, something that we don't like, or provide low quality vegetables for the market. And furthermore, we might deal with infrastructure deterioration, but we are going to assume that the system is going to work perfectly in this particular case. Just to give you a notion on how this aquaponic system looks like. So this is the plant that we are working. So here we have the lettuce tank. Here we have some salmon, and here we have the biofilter where the bacteria lives. So this is located in Landvik in South Norway, and we are gathering data. Yeah, we are gathering data from these tanks. So let us just pause for a moment the aquaponics and let us move to the recurrent neural networks. We are gathering several time series from these tanks, from turbidity, electroconductivity, pH, oxygen, and other type of nutrients and ions in the water, and also in the environment, temperature, air temperature, light. So this time series can be well analyzed with a recurrent neural network, as this particular architecture takes advantage of the time dependence between each of the data. For instance, a recurrent neural network will so the input in a recurrent neural network from the first state will influence the output in the last state. In the literature, there are two particular architectures that can do this work efficiently and with interesting results. First of all, we have the LSTM, or the long short-term memory. And this particular architecture uses some gates. For instance, we have the forget gate, the input gate, the output gate, and the self gate that controls the workflow of information that pass through the network. Then we have the GRU, which is the another architecture that use the reset gate and the update gate, and it's somehow a simplification of this a simplification of the workflow in a recurrent neural network. So say that, let us continue with our discussion with aquaponics. Forecasting variables in aquaponic systems can be done with models based on biological principles. The problem with these particular models is that they are not able to catch all the essence or all the dynamics inside a real system. Furthermore, those type of models are based on, let us say, linear regression, which is quite simple for a complex system. Then we have a feed-forward neural network that is used to predict, in this particular case, electroconductivity in an hydroponics system. Hydroponics is just the plants. They forget about the fish. The problem with this model is that in the presence of control variables, let us suppose that, for instance, the pumps for moving the water inside the tanks. In presence of those control variables, the feed-forward neural network fails to predict. So we can move to other type of models, like data-driven biological models. And these models are very good at predicting the variables in a steady state. But when the variable is in transient state, or where the dynamics are changing a lot, the model fails. And then we have another particular literature that is for crabs farming. Although this is not aquaponics, we can make some sort of analogy for our system of interest, where they use recurrent neural networks, and in this particular case for they solve oxygen, and the results are quite interesting and very promising. So taking this experience, the idea is, hey, let us try to model our system, or aquaponic system, with a recurrent neural network, and compare the results. So the workflow that we used is, first of all, our interest is to model the pH. In particular, we want to forecast the 1 hour of pH. And based on this data, I will repeat the electroconductivity, light, temperature, water flow. We need to pre-process it. In particular, we need to select features, normalize it, some time alignment, and smooth the data. Then we will design the models, train them, validate them, and compare the results with a baseline. In this particular case, it's just a feed-forward neural network. So this is how the time series looks like. Notice there are certain outliers, and there is some noise in the time series. In particular, this time series, the data set that I am using for this experiment is from April of 2021. And yeah, at least in Norway, this is like at the beginning of spring. So this experiment only works for this season. We need to repeat it for winter, summer, and yeah, winter, summer, and autumn. But what I want to point out is how the data looks like in this particular case. Although pH is a slow variable, and we want it to be as stable as possible, we can see certain variations. So we used a low pass filter to reduce the noise. First of all, reduce the noise, remove the outliers, and keep the data as it is. Then we use the correlation coefficient to understand which variables are more relevant for the pH, and in particular, the variables based on the correlation. Yeah, it's important to remark, correlation is not causation, but at least we have some notion of interaction between variables. The variables that are showed up to be interested for the pH are pH in other tanks, potassium, some light, water flow. Here we have the water flow between tanks, and the oxygen seems relevant for forecasting the pH. Then we normalize the data to prepare it for the neural network, and then we have the results over here. Something that I want to point out before discussing the results is how to prepare the data for the neural network. First of all, we take 3 hours, or we take 3 hours as inputs, and we want to predict 1 hour of this data. Then the neural network, we train the LSTM. In particular, the LSTM is a 3 layers network with almost 3 million parameters, and the GRU, and the other one is a GRU with 4 layers and almost 3 million parameters. We can see, first of all, here's the real signal. The multilayer perceptron considers this signal as constant, so yeah, it's not suitable for our job. Although, as I said before, this pH signal is slow. It has certain dynamics. So here we have the LSTM and the GRU. It seems, at least from the data, that the results are very, very, very similar. In particular, the LSTM has better loss value, but is not significant to say I will use LSTM because it has a better accuracy. So as discussion for this work, the recurrent neural network seems like a suitable architecture for forecasting pH in the aquaponic system. However, for future work, we need a faster preprocessing and feature selection workflow, as we want this in real time, in a real-time scenario. Furthermore, we want to take advantage of expert knowledge, so that this feature selection can be done with some knowledge beforehand. Here are some references for your consideration and future research. And I want to thank our partners in the project, in particular Feedback Aquaculture and Nivio, for providing the data for this project. So thank you so much.